Let's talk about how the cell phone camera inventions have cost several people their jobs, which would not have happened in the year 1980. I am recalling the incident with the cop that acted crazy at a pool party where 100 kids showed up. Remember that story? All those kids showed up because some idiot started a chain invitation on social media where one friend invites all of their friends and then their friends invite their friends and so forth. And at this swimming pool, this woman who got mad, this woman named Tracy Carver Allbritton, she started fighting with an African American girl after the girl started arguing with her, and it was all caught on camera. So during the fight, Allbritton made some racial slurs, and that was caught on camera. And the police were called because of this fight, apparently. Then that cop that got in trouble, remember him? Officer Casebolt. He had a nervous breakdown. It was actually funny how goofy he acted. He did a shoulder roll on the grass for no reason when he started running, like he's in an action movie or something. But what I'm trying to say is that in 1980, none of these people would have lost their jobs for this. Tracy Allbritton lost her job at Bank of America after a mob on Twitter pressured Bank of America into firing her for being racist. Can you imagine? You might have a bipolar disorder and you're fighting with a person who happens to be black. Now in a fight you naturally look for any weakness that you can find in your opponent. And if you know that your opponent will be upset at being called a nigger, or some racial slur in this case, of course you would be tempted to use that word to give yourself an upper hand. Except if the girl was white, then, that weakness couldn't have been exploited, but... So that's justifiable right there. In a fight, you look for any weakness you can grasp. Another thing is, being racist may not necessarily be a choice. It could be something, it's tied into like a sexual thing. And a lot of sexual stuff is hardly ever a choice. We all look to create healthy offspring, right? But I heard a few times that a child of a black and white parent can have a higher chance of sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia. Another thing is attractiveness. If you're white and you look at yourself in the mirror and you think of ways that you would like to improve your attractiveness, how many whites actually imagine, physical features of black people is something that would improve their appearance? Yeah, you might not want to have, too pale of a skin, but you wouldn't want your skin to be more brown than that of Hispanic people. You kind of would draw the line there. So before we look at racism as a choice, why not look at natural factors that might be the cause of it? Natural factors that might be wired into our subconscious mind to be racist toward people who don't look like ourselves. These factors are outside of our control. They're impulses that, often people will never admit to them, but they exist. And what I'm doing here, I'm basically using scientific examples here to explain why racism exists and how it may not be a choice. But nobody else brings up arguments like this. Everybody falsely thinks everything in life is a choice you make. Somebody who is born by sheer fortune, with a mind that is compatible to what society presently finds acceptable, never has to know the effort and the trouble of having to restrain themselves against certain compulsions. But someone else born with instincts that aren't compatible with society's standards has to constantly struggle to restrain themselves, to fit in. The mistake a person with the proper mindset ends up making is they believe they choose to be compatible with society and don't realize that it's not a choice for them either, but rather their mind is already conveniently programmed in the right way. They falsely think they're making some easy decision when in fact they're making no decision at all. They're just being themselves. It's someone with a deviant mind is the one who has to struggle making the choice to be the opposite of themselves, to fit in. Without stupid cameras, that pool incident would never have been publicized. Here's what might have happened in the 1980s. Some of the kids might have rode bicycles to the police station and filed paperwork complaints against Officer Casebolt. That is, if the kids weren't lazy and had given enough shit to do that instead of watching cartoons or rolling marbles. Maybe their parents might have done it for them, or they might not have given a shit either. Witnesses would have been unreliable, all making claims that don't match up. Reporters for the town's local newspaper might have come snooping around and asking questions about the incident, writing down statements in their notebooks. There might have been one article in the local gazette, and that's it. Instead of being recorded on video, the whole thing would have been nothing more than some reporter's vague notes. The world probably wouldn't have heard about this shit at all to pass any kind of judgment on it. Would anyone in the town have picketed the police station there? Maybe, maybe not. Officer Casebolt might have been reprimanded by his cigarette-smoking chief with a warning and a slap on the wrist. There would be no internet to expose anybody. This all-Britain woman would have kept her job. Were they going to picket her bank branch, demanding she's fired? I doubt it. I mean, the customers going in and out of the bank would have been pissed about the protesters blocking access to the premises, and nobody would listen to them, and they'd get tired of it after a few hours and go away. They might have been too lazy to picket anyway. Better just smoke pot at home and watch daytime TV. It's easier to protest and demand shit like this over Twitter, because then they don't have to get their lazy asses off the couch. People don't so easily run out of steam on the internet, like they do in the real world, where they'd have to get up and stand on their feet. As far as reporters go, bringing this to public's attention, the police chief could have leaned on the editor of the local paper, not to vilify Officer Casebolt before the community too much. There might have been a community meeting about this, but how many would forget by then and not give a shit anymore after a couple of days? You know, there would have been some tacit agreements from the police to train their officers better, and that would have been it. I have to stop right here and keep going tomorrow because this video is going to be way too long otherwise.